Are you looking for ways to strengthen your marriage? Would you like to raise children you enjoy being around? Do you long for a peaceful, orderly home that's a blessing to everyone who comes through its doors? Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jennifer Flanders, a Bible-believing, homeschooling mother to 12 and host of the Loving Life at Home podcast. Join me as we discover what God's Word has to say about marriage, motherhood, and minding the things that matter most. Hello, friend. Welcome to episode 40 of Loving Life at Home. Today, we're tackling a topic I call target practice, or the art of setting worthwhile goals. The notes for this particular podcast came from a talk I've given at various homeschool conventions and senior class meetings over the years, although I've since updated my outline with more current statistics. I want to start by defining what I mean by goal. The dictionary definition reads like this. 1, in football, soccer, rugby, hockey, some other games, a pair of posts linked by a crossbar, often with a net attached behind it, forming a space into or over which the ball has to be set in order to score. And 2, the object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. For the purposes of today's podcast, I'd like you to picture your goal as a target, something that you're shooting for, a vision of what you hope to accomplish. In 1 Corinthians 9:24-27, Paul writes, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things, so they do it to obtain a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not to run aimlessly. I box in such a way as to avoid hitting air, but I strictly discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified." Goals are important because they give us purpose and direction. We've graduated 10 of our 12 children so far from our homeschool, and I've always found it interesting to hear the young students in their graduating classes talk about their plans for the future. Some of them do not have a clue as to what they're going to do after graduation. If you ask them, they might shrug or say that they're just waiting on the Lord to show them what to do next. Others have their entire lives mapped out in their minds. Like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, they're shaking the dust of this crummy little town off their feet, and they're going to see the world. Italy, Greece, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. Then they may come back, go to college, and see what they know, and then they're going to build things, airfields, skyscrapers, 100 stories high, bridges a mile long. You know the line. Either way, James 4:13-15 provides some good context. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist or a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and also do this or that. So even if you aren't 100% sure what God would have you do with your life or have you do next, I recommend setting a reasonable goal and working towards it. As long as you hold your plans lightly, you can trust Him to redirect you if that is what needs to happen. Proverbs 16:9 assures us, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. And Psalms 37:23-24 states, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. Last January, my youngest daughter and I attended a mother-daughter retreat with several girls and moms from our homeschool group, and we were able to do a little target practice during our free time while we were at the retreat center. We practiced shooting rifles as well as bows and arrows. I was not very adept at either sport, but my daughter did pretty well, especially at archery. So when we're talking about taking aim at our goals, I want you to picture an archer with a quiver full of arrows slung across his back as he grips his compound bow. There's no way that archer is ever going to hit his target if he never fits an arrow to his string, is there? He may talk the talk, you just hide and watch. Someday I'm going to hit it big, but that won't become reality unless he actually shoots. As Proverbs 14:23 points out, in all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Or as Zig Ziglar observed, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So our archer needs to take an arrow out of his quiver and fit it to his string. That's the first step. But that action alone is not enough, is it? Because if he stands with his back to the target when he lets his arrows fly, he is going to miss the mark for sure. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who take that approach to meeting their goals. The actions that they take do not line up with their stated goals at all. Take, for instance, all the pre-med students you will find in just about any freshman college class. Some of these students are serious. They study hard, they make the grades, they do great. But others aren't willing to put in the necessary work to make it happen. They party and skip class and miss assignments and fail their tests, and there isn't a med school in the country that's going to take them seriously if they maintain those bad habits throughout their college years. Our actions broadcast to others what our true priorities are. If I tell you that I want to lose weight, but every time you see me, I am gorging on chocolate, you know that I'm not really committed to my stated goal of shedding unwanted pounds. My real priority is satisfying a sweet tooth. The same goes for my husband, only he won't be eating chocolate. He'll be eating Sour Patch Kids. So if you're going to be serious about reaching your goals, you need to spend your time doing things that carry you towards them. If you want to be a best-selling author, you got to put a pen to paper and actually write that book. If you want to make A's in school, you've got to set aside the video games and crack open the textbooks. And if you want to get in shape, you've got to stop eating junk food and get off the couch and get some exercise. So how can we make our actions line up with our stated goals? First of all, we focus on the goal. Don't get distracted. We write it down. We pray about it. This is exactly what our archer needs to do if he is ever going to hit that target. He needs to turn around and face it, focus on it undistractedly, and pray that God will help him shoot straight. Proverbs 29:18 tells us where there's no vision, the people perish, which is why you should ask God to give you a clear vision of what he wants you to accomplish. Your vision needs to be concrete. Your goals need to be concrete. Don't waste time with goals that are vague or ambiguous. Make sure your goals are well-defined and specific. Not, I want to lose weight, but I'm going to give up sugar and ride my bike for 20 minutes 5 days a week. Not, I want to be a better wife, but I'm going to read 25 Ways to Communicate Respect, a book that I'll link in the show notes, and focus on implementing one chapter a week until it becomes a habit. That's what I mean by concrete, clearly defined, and unambiguous. But next, our goals should also be logical. Logical means it should be in line with our long-term vision. Winning first place in a hot dog eating contest is a concrete goal, but if my larger objective is to be a trim, healthy mama, then scarfing down 50 Frankfurters in a single sitting is not going to help me reach my fitness goals. Logical also means it should make sense, at least to you. I remember seeing a movie in which one character only worked out one side of his body. Everyone else thought he was crazy, but he wanted to see how much bigger his muscles would get if he lifted weights just on one side, so that strategy made perfect sense to him. Similarly, when my husband and I were newlywed, the idea of foregoing all forms of birth control didn't make sense to a lot of people, including both sets of our parents and lots of other very vocal friends and family members. But that's okay. We don't expect everyone to share our goal, but shunning birth control made perfect sense to us because we were determined to trust God with our fertility, just like we trust him with our salvation and our health and our finances. And leaving our family planning in his hands seemed like a logically consistent thing for us to do. Logical goals are also large enough to be a challenge. They should definitely stretch you, but they should be small enough to be attainable, which is why we need to break bigger goals down into bite-sized pieces. One way to break big goals into little ones is to make them time-oriented rather than task-oriented. You may not have a huge block of time to devote to completing a difficult task like writing a book or cleaning out the garage or teaching your child college algebra all at once, but you can set aside small amounts of time and work toward that end by spending 15 minutes a day emptying boxes that are stored in your garage, or half an hour developing your book idea, or 20 minutes doing multiplication drills and covering a math lesson with your grade schooler. Isaiah 28:10 talks about adding precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line upon line, here a little, there a little. That's because slow, steady, incremental steps add up to significant progress over time. My grandfather always said, watch your nickels and dimes, and the dollars will take care of themselves. The same is true of your time. Watch your hours and days, and the years will take care of themselves. Or, as another wise person observed, by the inch, life's a cinch. By the yard, life is hard. Elmer John Leonard Jr. was an American novelist and screenwriter. His earliest novels, published in the 1950s, were westerns, but Leonard went on to specialize in crime fiction and suspense thrillers. A reporter once asked him, "How do you write such interesting books?" And I love his response. "I just leave out all the boring stuff." That's a great principle for time management as well. How do you accomplish so much in a day? You just cut out all the time wasters. Did you know that average Americans spend 3 hours a day watching television? That's just programming on TV. That doesn't even count streamed movies on your computers and other devices. Average American teens send 60 texts a day, with teen girls getting closer to 100 texts a day. Teens spend 5 hours a day on social media. They average 8 to 9 hours a day using electronic media. That's as much as a full-time job. 350 million users suffer from Facebook addiction. And did you know that Instagram users upload 95 million images each and every day? That's a lot of time and energy that could be redirected to more productive activities. Of course, our goals should also be ethical. It does no good if we set concrete, logical goals that are illegal or immoral. Instead, we should think big by making sure our goals are beneficial to others, intrinsically good, and glorifying to God. The scriptural support for these points can be found in Philippians 2, 3-4. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourselves. We need to be concerned not only with our own personal interests, but also with the interest of others. We should stop and consider how our goals and our actions might benefit the people around us. Then James 4:17 speaks of setting goals that are intrinsically good. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Then 1 Corinthians 10:31 makes it clear that glorifying God should also take priority. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. We should also make a point to set active goals. And by active, I mean active versus passive. I will do such and such versus I'll stop doing thus and so. From a practical standpoint, it's easier to replace a bad habit with a good habit than to just stop doing that bad thing cold turkey. Charles Duhigg provided all sorts of scientific data backing up that fact in his groundbreaking book, The Power of Habit, which I highly recommend reading, and I'll link it in today's show notes. But we should also contrast action versus intention. Don't just think about doing something, actually do it. I think it was Henry Ford who said, "You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do." At some point, you've got to stop planning and get to work. General George Patton observed something very similar. A good plan executed today is better than a perfect plan executed at some indefinite point in the future. Better is a good plan in action than a perfect plan on paper. Our family's getting ready right now to take a big family road trip, and a lot of planning has gone into getting ready for it. But if all I did was daydream about where I wanted to go, that trip would never come to fruition. So instead, we saved up the money. My husband requested time off from work. I mapped out the route that will take us to where we want to go. I made reservations for all our stops along the way. My husband will service the van while I pack the bags. Then, when the time comes, we'll load everyone into the van and be on our way. And my last tip for goal planning is to pick a goal that's rewarding. By rewarding, I don't necessarily mean that you'll gain recognition or appreciation. There may not be any accolades involved, and you might not even particularly enjoy the process, which is certainly true of the half marathon I completed in February and that full marathon my husband and I ran 20 plus years ago. I've never experienced a runner's high, and I don't particularly enjoy plodding along for hours on end, but I do enjoy the benefits of increased energy and lowered heart rate and improved health that accompanied my training. But beyond the warm fuzzies or blue ribbons that your efforts may or may not garner you, the goals you set should give you a sense of purpose and perspective and satisfaction over working toward a goal that's bigger than yourself. And we also need to recognize that many, if not most of those kinds of goals aren't necessarily accomplished on our first try. Some may literally take a lifetime, and we will need an extra measure of endurance to keep at them without giving up or becoming discouraged. Picture that archer that we were talking about earlier. He's finally facing in the right direction. His attention is fully focused on his goal. He fits the arrow to his string and sends it sailing through the air, only to fall short of his mark. What will his response be then? What would yours be? Will you throw up your hands in disgust and quit in frustration? Will you cry, "This is useless, forget the whole thing, pack your bags and go home"? That's how lots of people react to failure, but you'll never reach your goal if that's your response. Take a page out of Thomas Edison's book instead. Did you know he tested thousands of designs without success while trying to create a light bulb? Yet his response was this: "I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Don't you admire his grit? He also said many of life's failures are people who don't realize how close they were to success when they gave up. And another of his quotes that I love is this: "Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work." We'd all love to be instantaneously successful at what we do, but that rarely happens. Most people who appear to be overnight successes have actually been working away at their goals for years and years before catching a big break. And that's the kind of tenacity that I want to show as well. As Galatians 6:9 entreats us, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we don't lose heart." Joshua 1:9 is another good one. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." You may have heard it said that success is its own reward, and that's undoubtedly true. But doing the right thing for the right reason and making slow, steady progress is a reward in itself, even if you never completely achieve the goal that you're aiming for. Each time that you shoot that arrow and miss the mark, but then step forward to retrieve your arrow, you're just that much closer to the target and that much more likely to hit it on your next try. But even if we never get that bullseye we were hoping for, we are better off for having tried. There is honor in the effort. Hebrews chapter 11 is filled with such stories. Sometimes called the Hall of Faith, it recounts the lives of countless saints who came before us, men and women of faith who did not live to see the earthly fulfillment of what they had hoped for, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. So prayerfully set goals, but hold them with an open hand. Make a plan and stick with it as long as the Lord allows. Invest your time wisely. Make sure the things you're doing daily are carrying you in the direction that you want to go. Take into consideration the needs of those around you. Don't get discouraged when you face setbacks or don't progress as quickly as you'd hoped. Just keep on praying, keep on working, keep on trusting, and leave the results to God. Thanks so much for listening today. If you have a question you'd like to hear covered on this podcast, message me on Instagram at Flanders_family or contact me through my website, lovinglifeathome.com. Before you go, if you've been encouraged by something you've heard on the show, do me a favor and forward the link to a friend or head over to Loving Life at Home on Apple iTunes to subscribe and leave a written review of the show. Your doing so will help others find me so they can listen too. Until next time, I pray the Lord will bless your efforts to build a loving home life centered on Him.